நீங்க பாருங்க, ரத்தத்துல நியாயம் கொடுத்தீங்க, ரத்தத்துல நியாயம் கொடுத்தீங்க. கதை பக்கத்துல ஒரு ஆள் எந்திரிக்க
Recording in progress.
வேற என்ன பொருள் நாங்க கையில வச்சுருக்கோம் பாருங்க. நீங்க ஆமா பண்ணிருக்கீங்க பாருங்க பாருங்க சார்.
நேரத்தே உங்களால திருப்பி உள்ள வரக்கூடாத இடத்துல உள்ள நாங்க பண்ணக்கூடிய வேலையை நீங்க தடுக்கிறீங்க. அதுக்கு ஒரு கம்ப்ளைண்ட் ரெவன்யூ தர்றாங்க. அவங்க எல்லாத்தையும் ரிமாண்ட் பண்ண போறோம். சரிங்களா? எல்லாம் எத்தனை பேர் இன்னைக்கு அதான் பண்ண போறோம். இன்னைக்கு அதான் பண்ண போறோம். சரியா? வாங்க எல்லாம் போறோம். ஒரு கம்ப்ளைண்ட் வேண்ட ரிமாண்ட் பண்றது. ரைட். உள்ள சேர்ந்து அப்புறம் அறிவு தனியா கூட்டி போய் செக் பண்ணு. போய் ஆர்டர் ப்ராப்பரா ஆர்டர் வாங்கி போக மாட்டாங்க.
இல்லையா தண்ணி இல்ல அந்த செல் இருக்குன்னு சொல்ல வேண்டியது கேட்கணும்ல. வச்சிருக்கியா தண்ணி 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 இல்ல தண்ணி தண்ணி இருந்தா தண்ணி அரைச்சிக்கா இல்ல கூப்பிடுறேனே யாரோ ஒரு வர சொல்லிட்டு தண்ணி கொடுக்கணும். என்ன மயமா இங்க பாருங்க, என்ன செஞ்சாலும் விட போறது இல்ல. சிஸ்டர் வாங்க, அஞ்சு வேலைங்க
நீ வெயிட் பண்ணுமா, நான் வெயிட் பண்ணுமா? என்ன சொன்னானு நேற்று நாளைக்கு வருது ஹைகோர்ட். சொல்றதை கேளுன்ற ஹைகோர்ட்ல வருதுல, போய் ஆர்டர் வாங்கிட்டு வான்னு சொன்னா இல்லையா? அப்புறம் ஏன் இங்க வந்து உட்காந்துருக்க? நீ மதிக்க மாட்டே கோட்டா, என்ன மதிச்சிருக்க? சப்டாலுக்கு என்ன ஆர்டர் போடுறான் தெரியுமா? எந்த பார்ட்டி ஏ பார்ட்டி பி பார்ட்டி ரெண்டுமே இருக்கக்கூடாது. எங்க இருக்கிற பல்லு தெரிஞ்சுக்க என்னது லாயரு? என்ன நீ லாயர் மாதிரி நடந்துதான் நான் கொடுத்துருப்போம். நீ லாயர் மாதிரி நடந்துதான் கொடுத்துருப்போம்.
என்ன எந்த உள்ள வந்ததே என்ன அமைதியா வீட்டுல உட்காரு. இது வாங்கிடு இல்ல பொதுவாக அங்க ஊர்ல செய்யணும். இங்க வந்து அடுத்த இடத்துல
சொந்த காசுல
சொந்த காசு.
ஆமா புடிச்சு விட்டுறோமா புடிச்சு விட்டுறோமா அது அடுத்த இடத்துல வாங்கி வச்சுக்கிட்டு சொந்த காசு போய் ஆர்டர் வாங்கிட்டு சொன்னா இல்லையா
அது வந்து அது கிராப் பண்ணறதுக்கு நிறைய வகையில ட்ரை பண்ணிருக்கா. 2010ல ஃபர்ஸ்ட் என்ன பண்ணானா இந்த கிஃப்ட் டீட கேன்சல் பண்ணறதுக்கு முயற்சி பண்ணிருக்கா. சப் ரெஜிஸ்ட்ரார்ல போய் அவங்கள ஏதோ ஒரு இது பண்ணி அங்க கேன்சல் பண்ணிட்டா. ஆனா நம்மளுக்கு எல்லாருக்கும் தெரியும் சட்டப்படி
by a foreign power. Even in such cases, the legal personality of the state is considered to persist, enabling its subsequent re-establishment. Historical examples dating back to the 18th century include cases like Portugal and Genoa that were re-established after the Vienna Congress of 1815. More recent examples include countries such as Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, and Austria that were re-established after World War II. Even when a nation is deprived of its territory, the nation continues to exist. Its sovereignty and international legal personality continues to persist. The Dalai Lama, as the spiritual and temporal leader of Tibet, exemplifies this principle. In 1959, the Dalai Lama was exiled and forced to flee. Despite the challenges faced, the Dalai Lama continues to advocate for the preservation of Tibetan culture and garners worldwide support for Tibetan autonomy on the global stage. Similarly, from 1309 to 1376, the Pope of Catholicism had been in exile in Avignon. Despite this, he was recognized as the head of state as well as head of the church and given full privileges of the position after their return to Rome. Even in 1861, much of the papal territories had been lost, leaving the Pope with no sovereign territory other than the papal residence and related buildings. Yet his temporal powers were still acknowledged. He was recognized as a head of state, and later, the Lateran Treaty of 1929 formally re-established papal sovereignty over the Vatican City. The Sovereign Order of Malta further exemplifies this principle, retaining international recognition as a sovereign entity despite the permanent loss of their territory upon Napoleon's invasion in June 1798. Despite such permanent loss of territory, the sovereignty and the international legal personality of the Sovereign Order of Malta continue to persist. Much later in 1894, the order settled in Rome and acquired two properties, the Magistral Palace and the Magistral Villa that received extraterritorial status. Today, the order maintains diplomatic relations with 112 countries, issues its own diplomatic passports, currency stamps, and vehicle registration plates, and has been granted observer status in the United Nations. All these examples of state re-establishment illustrate the principle of continuity of states, as per international law, that a state's legal personality persists over time. A nation continues to exist even after a complete loss of territory. A far more striking example is of the oceanic countries, which are under the threat of their entire nation being drowned and submerged due to rising sea levels owing to global warming. In response to such existential threat of climate change, Pacific Island nations, including Tuvalu, have enacted constitutional amendments and made international declarations affirming that their nation and their sovereign rights will continue to persist, despite their entire territory being lost to the sea. This proactive stance is highlighted in the Constitution of Tuvalu Act 2023 and the Pacific Islands Forum Declaration of 2021. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, enlightened Hindu civilization consisted of 10,000 Hindu traditions, or sampradayas, that existed in 56 Hindu nations, 200 Hindu kingdoms, 1,700 Hindu provinces that covered more than 6 million kilometer square of Asia. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, SPH, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, is the reviver of Kailasa, this ancient, enlightened Hindu civilizational nation. Kailasa is an unbroken cultural, religious, historical, civilizational, and sovereign continuation and revival of multiple of these historical Hindu sovereign states and Hindu ecclesiastical entities. The unbroken continuity of these ancient Hindu nations through Kailasa results in the legal recognition of Kailasa as per the international customary law, particularly the doctrine of continuity. The international law, the doctrine of continuity, implies that upheavals and revolutions within a country, changes in government, territory.
Nithyanandam, everybody, and dear viewers around the globe. So today, once again, we are going to address the persecution that has once again come upon us, upon Kailasa in Bolivia. And we are going to be specifically addressing the media, the Hindu-phobic, anti-Indigenous media who have been spreading blatant lies about Kailasa, about Swamiji, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam. And these blatant lies that the Hindu-phobic, anti-Indigenous media channels have been propagating is completely against the right to self-determination of Kailasa, and not just for Kailasa, but for all the indigenous nations around the globe. Understand, Kailasa is a Hindu nation and an indigenous Hindu nation. And we are here to support all the indigenous nations around the globe who have been denied their rights. They have been denied their rights to self-determination and the right to preserve their culture and tradition.
Now, right now, we have been seeing the last 2-3 days about what level the persecution has been happening. And we are also receiving a lot of support from the Hindus around the world. And we would really like to thank all of you for coming together. But it's time for us to really, really stand together and fight this war. Now, what is happening? What is the latest live updates from on the ground? What is going on with the sovereign order of Kailasa's monks, and what is actually happening? Why is this persecution happening? And who are the people that are behind this persecution? And why is this being targeted, not just on Kailasa, but on all the indigenous nations? We are going to be addressing many of these today. And as we are talking to you, we are also noticing that there are many malicious, false allegations that are being slammed upon Kailasa and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. Utter baseless lies are being propagated by many of the anti-Indigenous racist media channels. So today we are going to be addressing each of these false allegations and stating the facts clear. During this, if any of you have any questions, please take a moment and you can post it here in the comments.
The other thing that we are also looking at, especially over the last 2 days, we have all been witnessing the live that is going on. In fact, various of these media channels, the so-called the pro-indigenous media channels, we are going to be exposing every one of them today who actually are using the garb. And these are the people, the purveyors of the colonial fan fiction, what they have been doing. Today's term is going to be an exposing of all of these and presenting to every one of you, all our viewers, every one of you who are watching us live, what exactly is going on, what exactly is the truth, and how this anti-indigenous media, anti-indigenous racist, Hindu-phobic, Hindu-mesic media is conveniently trying to gaslight and attacking, persecuting the local indigenous communities which are there in Bolivia and Kailasa also at the same time. That is exactly what we are going to be doing at today. We are going to be looking at the accusations that are placed, and we are going to look at the truth behind them.
So one of the main accusations that we see throughout all these racist media is that they are consistently labeling Kailasa as a fictitious state, as an imaginary state, as Kailasa doesn't exist. So let's look at the facts. Let's look at the legalities, the facts of how these media channels are wrong. So if we look at the very basic international law,
Fictitious. How can they claim something? No, it's a curious label given for a civilization that's older than most of the nations. But then Columbus once called the Americas as imaginary too. This seems like history is just repeating itself. Kailasa is a real sovereign nation, and we have the juridical statehood under the international law. See, for a nation, there are four things that are needed. Let us understand this logically. This is for everyone, all the viewers that are watching here with us as well. The diplomatic recognition under international law is not contingent on universal acceptance. The 1933 Montevideo Convention explicitly defines statehood as requiring four criteria. First being a permanent population. Second, a sovereign territory. Third, a functional government. And fourth, capacity to enter into relations with other states. Kailasa has all these four criteria. Kailasa fulfills all these four with a permanent population, and we have multiple sovereign territories and autonomous lands, and we have clear functional government based on the Hindu constitutions as per the Vedas and Agamas, and we have the jurisprudence, the Hindu jurisprudence in Kailasa. And we also have multiple diplomatic relations and bilateral treaties with so many nations, including many of the sovereign indigenous nations as well. So it's really, it doesn't make any sense that many of these media channels are even using this terminology, fictitious. This is directly violating our very fundamental right to exist, because when you call it fictitious, you're denying our very existence.
and see, there's another law that regulates this, and that is there's another article in the Montevideo Convention on the rights of and duties of the states, and it says that I'm going to quote the article number 3. It states that the political existence of the state is independent of recognition by other states, emphasizing the inherent rights of states to self-governance, territorial integrity, and political independence. Further, Article 13 of the 1948 Charter of the Organization of the American States elucidates the independent exercise of these rights within the framework of international law. And it states that the political existence of the state is independent of recognition of other states. Even before being recognized, the state has the right to defend its integrity and independence. So,
Adding in over here, I just wanted to ask the so-called media houses who are there, or rather, should I say, purveyors of colonial fan fiction, because you know what? Your recent articles are not just a journalistic misstep, but they are a full-on assault on the truth, the indigenous rights, and the basic decency. You have cloaked yourself as the champions of marginalized while stomping on the very principles that you guys claim to uphold. You know what? The irony is thicker than your editorial bias. Here, you are the people who are arguing that indigenous communities should not have autonomy to choose their own diplomatic partners, and trying to claim that Kailasa is fictitious. Self-determination is where we have the indigenous nations have autonomy to do what they feel as right and to uphold their integrity. When you just go on telling that, oh, Kailasa is a fictitious nation not recognized internationally, who crowned you as the gatekeeper of sovereignty? The UN itself, in its charter, tells very clearly that it does not recognize states, it admits members. Taiwan, Kosovo, Palestine. You've heard any of them? They all exist without a UN gold star. Kailasa has it all. We have the permanent population, we have the defined territory, a functioning government, and diplomatic nations worldwide. And as mentioned earlier, we are rooted in the ancient Hindu tradition with an unbroken succession tracking all the way back to these Vedic and Agamic kingdoms that are there. Sorry if that's too complex for your word count, but as per the international norms, as per the Montevideo Convention on the rights and duties of state, let's lay it out. We meet every single criteria. This isn't about recognition, it's about your attempt to delegitimize all the indigenous rights. But we are still standing, and we are not going to bend down or back off just because you're trying to delegitimize us.
And would this media organization dare to label any of the other states, other nation as fictitious? For example, we have the Tibetan government in exile since 1959. We have the Portugal or the Genoa that were actually occupied during the 18th century and also re-established after the Vienna Congress of 1815. We also have Poland, Ethiopia, Czechoslovakia, Albania, Austria. We have the Sovereign Order of Malta, who doesn't even have land today, but they have diplomatic relations with more than 100 states around the globe. And we also had the Ukrainian government that was in exile. We had the Royal Lao government that was also in exile. But why is it that only when it comes to Kailasa, only when it comes